I'm a sucker for medieval castles. That's where we're going in Der Eisencrache.
That was Jason Blundell, who was the game director of Black Ops Zombies from 2013 to 2019. Recently, I've realized that I'm also becoming a sucker for medieval castles, or perhaps realizing I always was one. Across the hundreds of video games I've played so far in my life, I've noticed castle levels always contain some of the strongest, most interesting level design I've experienced. I spent some time researching castle architecture and game design principles to see if there's some relationship between the two that answers the question I put as the title of this video. The games that I'm using as examples include Resident Evil 8 and 4 Remake, the Black Ops 3 Zombies map Der Eisencrache, and Destiny 2's most recent dungeon, Warlord's Ruin. The dungeon's what pushed this idea into my brain and why I decided to make this video. I was playing through and thought to myself, man, castle levels are always so cool. I feel like there's a reason why. Obviously, there are loads more games to use as examples, including a pretty famous series that has the word castle in it. These are just a few examples that mean the most to me, and if you have any examples of good castle level designs that are important to you, then feel free to share. Let's get into a few reasons why I think castle levels are so fun. So, to start off, I found an article written by Celia Wager about good FPS map design principles. They bring up the idea of using loops to give the players multiple paths to navigate within a level and use Counter-Strike maps as an example. Loops give players more control over their positioning, which gives aid to gameplay styles such as stealth. Most of my game examples are FPSs, but I think this principle of having maps use loops for effective design extends to other game genres. Adding to this idea of loops giving players more control, I think looping helps make map traversal more efficient, since you don't have to turn back to return to a previous area. Instead, you can decide to just run forward because you'll eventually reach that area again. You can feel the strength of looping map design in the Der Eisencrache Zombies map. Black Ops Zombies' core gameplay is all about non-stop moving and shooting, which is why training zombies is the superior tactic over camping in a fortified position. Many maps such as Shangri-La, Transit, Die Rise, and Voyage of Despair have problems with their map flow. Usually there's some painful waiting, like Transit's bus or Die Rise's elevators. It's also annoying to have important progression pieces like Juggernog and Pack-a-Punch being put in the inconvenient areas that are dead ends or very far away from the preferred play space. Call of the Dead's Juggernog location comes to mind. Getting caught in dead ends or tight spaces is usually how a player will go down during a zombies match. That's why maps with good areas to train and convenient to access perks and upgrades usually end up becoming people's favorites to play, such as Ascension, Kino, and Origins. Der Eisencrache is one of those maps. It doesn't matter if I'm getting Jug, Pack-a-Punch, or a new shield, I'm always able to travel through the map without having to double back on myself into the horde of zombies following me. The part about Der Eisencrache having stellar map design that interests me the most is that Treyarch had most of their homework done already by some Europeans about 1,000 years ago. The map's architecture is based on the Hohenwerfen castle in Austria. While creative liberties are taken to make the gameplay flow better, the two castles are almost one-to-one. A few people have even vlogged themselves visiting the castle and showing off how similar it is to its in-game counterpart.
We've got none other than a door which would head to the Undercroft. Boom, that's your dragon spot, and then there'd be a mystery box right there.
Treyarch have done this with other locations, such as Alcatraz and the Titanic, turning them into zombie maps that are almost on a one-to-one scale. Those maps don't translate as nicely due to having more of the inconveniences I mentioned earlier. Who knew the Titanic's interior is a terrible place to fend off zombies? On the other hand, the Hohenwerfen castle works excellently and matches the pace of this mode's gameplay. Black Ops 3 isn't the only game to have a real-life castle as one of its levels. Castle Dimitrescu in Resident Evil Village is heavily inspired by the Peli's castle in Sinea, Romania. In RE4's case, I couldn't find any information that points to any location used as inspiration for Salazar's castle. Unlike Black Ops Zombies, where this type of looping level design isn't always the case, Resident Evil games mostly have their maps loop back around each other. As the article I mentioned earlier said, looping map design is pivotal for providing the player with stealth options, which is obviously a big mechanic of survival horror, to keep away from danger and maintain your limited resources. Also, looping around to get a flank on an enemy for a knife kill is always satisfying. Finally, maybe it's just a me thing, but I found both castles the easiest to navigate out of all the sections in their respective games. I think it's because the gameplay is made to fit the space rather than the space to fit the gameplay. These castles have no weird snaking pathways that are awkward to traverse, like I found in 8's Moro section or some of 4's industrial hallways, such as that factory you get trapped in the beginning of Chapter 2. Overall, something about an RE game that takes place in a castle just hits the right notes. The setting works so nice, Capcom has used it twice. This isn't the only reason I felt castles work so well as video game levels. They don't just have nice architecture for traversal, they were also sort of built to withstand a heavy attack, which contests some of the mightiest power fantasies. Overcoming barriers is another form of gameplay progression that is fun to perform. Unlocking an HM in a Pokemon game or upgrading your equipment to dive deeper in Subnautica are primary examples that come to my mind when thinking of overcoming barriers in video games. Castles are built to be barriers in real life, with all their gatehouses, moats, and walls. This means levels set in castles have some ideas for progression already done for them. Storming through the gates of a castle to fight against an army provides a satisfying resistance to push through. This aspect of having a castle being the barrier to overcome really shines in Destiny's Warlord's Ruin dungeon. Dungeons in Destiny are 3 combat encounters long, with the connecting lines being a mixture of platforming and light puzzles. After Warlord's Ruin's first boss, your team is teleported into the castle's prison cells and must solve a puzzle to escape. Then you're in these catacombs filled with traps like spikes and fake chests trying to find a way out. Finally, once you're able to reach outside, you cross this massive bridge and you're just mowing down the castle defenders left and right with your abilities. This one traversal section of the dungeon has 3 unique barriers, and 2 of them are tightly themed around the environment this dungeon takes place in. In my opinion, nothing performs better as a barrier to overcome than a boss fight. They provide an excellent test to show off your game knowledge and skills. This is the first and currently only Destiny dungeon to have all 3 encounters be boss fights. Every other dungeon will have at least one of its encounters be a non-boss encounter that provides a different style of combat challenge with some light puzzle elements sprinkled in. While it could be a complete coincidence, I would like to believe that this dungeon setting influenced the decision of every encounter having a boss. What's a better way to have a castle defended than by its most powerful inhabitants? Almost all bosses in Destiny have a shield that makes them invulnerable to damage and requires a series of mechanics to be performed to remove that shield. During the dungeon's second boss fight, you have to use torches to stay warm from the storm that sweeps through at a specific interval during the fight. Killing the mini-bosses and capturing their totems during the storm will spawn fireballs that can be dunked at the lanterns around the boss and remove its shield. Bungie's raid and dungeon team always does a standout job making the levels mechanics coupled to its environment. It's what puts Destiny above other games for me, because I feel that many other games have their environments serve only as set dressing and don't contribute to the core experience of the boss fight. Warlord's Ruin sits near the top of Destiny's dungeon offerings for me, and I think it being set in a castle nested on some mountain peaks is the main reason why. The setting makes the context of surmounting these challenges easy to comprehend and therefore more enjoyable to play. The last point I want to touch on is about the enticing rewards castle levels tend to have. After all, what's the point of putting in the effort to overcome this massive structure if there aren't any spoils for your conquest?
You've got a soft spot for treasure, eh? Yeah, that's the way.
Video games and secret rewards are like bleach and vinegar. They're two things that are just meant to go together. On the list of video game aspects that make me happy, finding secrets is high on that list. Uncovering mysteries that the developers put in their game scratches a satisfying itch in my brain every time. It feels like you're seeing things you shouldn't be seeing, even though you're supposed to, since it's a video game. Castles also contain this aura of mystery. There's a layer underneath the surface that beckons you to investigate. Their vaults filled to the brim with secret information and treasure waiting to be brought to light. Sure enough, all my examples are full of secrets to uncover. Resident Evil 4 and 8 are filled with hidden treasures that can be sold to the game's merchant. Destiny hides secret chests and lore collectibles throughout the nooks and crannies of its dungeons, which fit right at home in a castle setting. And Black Ops Zombies has secrets baked into its identity with all its Easter egg shenanigans, so it also feels right at home with this setting. A game that goes the extra mile will have its rewards match the theme of the setting. Zombie maps always have a unique wonder weapon that fits the map theme. Eisencrache having 4 different ultra-powerful bows that are locked behind cryptic puzzles in the castle's architecture is really cool. Warlord's Ruins loot contains all the weapons knights would use, such as bows, swords, and rocket pistols. There's a specific power fantasy that gets filled here, and it just hits different. I know some of these points feel like common sense, but that's kind of the point I'm making. Castles easily fit the mold for so many good game design principles, and I wanted to bring attention to that. Those European architects 1,000 years ago would have made very good game designers. If you enjoyed my video, I'd appreciate if you checked out something else I made, such as the couple that I put here on screen right now. If you're interested in seeing what I make in the future, a sub would be appreciative. Otherwise, thanks for watching, have a good day.